Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. Welcome to the Content PAX. Or, if things go the way they're going, probably the Content POX. PAX East or PAX Prime, whichever you prefer. PAX Australia most likely, where you will likely be eaten by every possible variety of animal known to man before you contract the slight cough that is the PAX box. It's known for disease. It's a lot of nerds, fairly low hygiene standards, a lot of handshakes, hugs, and close body contact to people that really haven't actually showered all that much. It's unfortunate, and that was day one, so it could end up getting a little bit worse. So a bit sniffly, my apologies. But as I said I was going to do, I'm going to put together a little video every day while I'm here at PAX, just to let you know the things that I've seen, and a few comments on the event here and there. So, let's talk about PAX. Day one. Busy, very busy. PAX East is known as the smaller con. Not by much, honestly. Very, very large expo hall. I think the expo hall here is larger than any of the individual expo halls that were available at PAX Prime, but of course in PAX Prime there were actually more of them. So it's primarily this one big hall. And then there's a bunch of ancillary stuff off to the side, as well as meeting rooms, general console free play areas, TCG board games, as well as the 4 or 5 different theaters. So the actual publishers and developers that were dominating this year in terms of size, probably Bethesda, their booth's pretty big. That's all about Elder Scrolls Online. There's basically nothing else worth looking at there. There's also a Capcom booth that's a fair size. Ubisoft as well. They actually have Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, and they have been giving out free flags to anyone that watches their theater presentations. Like, let us advertise to you for 10 to 15 minutes, and we'll give you a flag. Wow. Yeah, no. That doesn't sound like fun at all. There's a Capcom booth here and there, not a huge amount there. A lot of exhibitors such as NVIDIA, EVGA are around the place. And one of the biggest stories of PAX, of course, was the fact that Blizzard announced a new title. Now, about a week or so ago, they said that it was going to be something new, something that we hadn't really seen, something that wasn't part of their main 3 franchises. Now, that was only a half-truth, because of course it ended up being Hearthstone Heroes of Warcraft, which is a spin-off free-to-play CCG. Now, I don't really have a problem with that, because I kind of like CCGs, and the story of this is that it was supposedly done by about 15 developers within the core team, and thought, hey, it's a nice little thing to release. And yeah, they're kind of right. I think the problem with Blizzard is that any announcement that Blizzard ever makes, especially when they say something as charged and loaded as not part of our main 3 franchise, sends the rumor mill into overdrive. Hype machine just gets rolling, and then, of course, inevitably you're disappointed. I don't personally have a problem with it beyond the fact that I actually liked the original WoW TCG, the actual card game, physical card game. Thought it was a good game. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. I actually collected it quite a bit. And I was hoping for an online implementation of that. Funnily enough, this lines up somewhat to a leaked roadmap that went out a couple of years ago, maybe even longer than that. Was it? Yeah, maybe 2010, possibly before that, which has been pretty much bang on the money so far in terms of what they've got planned, in terms of expansion releases for World of Warcraft and so on and so forth. So that does actually line up with what it said there, which was WoW TCG Online. But it turns out that this ended up being something entirely different. Although there's some similarities here and there. I was actually looking at the cards in that, and they look very, very similar to WoW TCG cards. Even the health indicator is something that I've kind of seen before. I'm like, huh, this is kind of familiar. It looks reasonably fun. I mean, it's a free-to-play game, and it's Blizzard having a bash at a free-to-play game, which is in itself kind of interesting. It also means that it's sort of Blizzard's foray into the idea of mobile gaming. That's what it looks like it's designed around. As regards to being able to look at it, yeah, no chance. We were told there was no appointments, and we went there pretty early on day one, so there's no appointments. Okay. They invited a bunch of fan sites along to essentially digest the game, and that's a fairly standard Blizzard tactic, really. They bring in a lot of their fan sites for these big announcements. I mean, you can perceive it as rewarding them for their loyalty, but it's also a really good way to just market the game, because fan sites generally don't speak badly about the game itself. Anyway, aside from that, we did a number of different appointments today. We've been trying to use our new equipment. We had a few problems. We have a nice portable HDMI recorder, but the hard drive failed in it today, so we've been doing mostly fraps. Not too much screen, actually, with the camera, which is good. We got a new camera that syncs up a little bit better with the actual stuff itself as well as some new gear for it. So it should look pretty good when we have to film the screen. But for the most part, we've been able to do fraps, mostly because it's been indie games or just early builds that have been running on PCs. So we started off with Hawken, and that's of course a bit of a throwback to the previous packs. We looked at a few new mechs and things like that. I played around with the Reaper and the Raider a little bit. I'm going to be looking at that in more depth because we kind of ran out of time. We did a lot of talk about business model and things like that, but I'd like to show you some more footage from Hawken. I haven't done that in a while, so that's something I'll probably be doing when I get back. They've given me access to a press account which has a lot of advanced stuff on it, so I should be able to show you some pretty cool stuff from Hawken. After that, we ended up going to check out Delver's Drop, which is something you've probably heard about because it had some recent Kickstarter success. Pretty interesting, sort of roguelike Zelda-ish game. Nice graphic style, really slippy controls, and deliberately so. I actually asked them about it. It's like, is this supposed to be like ice skating? Yeah, apparently it is. And it was fun. I died over and over and over again. The level design in that game is just something evil. There's blocks which you can get crushed under. There's springs, for no good reason. Springs that throw you into lava and stuff. It's really kind of nasty, but it's a fun little game. We'll see where it actually develops. Obviously, a lot of the stuff we saw at PAX is very, very much in development. Checked out something called Secret Ponchos, which is a Western third-person deathmatch game. That was okay. The controls were really ropey on that game. It was very much pre-alpha. There was a lot of bugs in it. So they're working on developing it. It's a very, very small team. It's actually got some guys from... It has a couple of ex-Blizzard staff on it as well. It's kind of this passion project they're making in their off time. They don't actually have that many full-time devs on it. It's sort of a hobby for them to make this game. They had this idea about doing a spaghetti western multiplayer arena game. And it works out pretty well. It has some pretty nice ideas. It's got secondary weapons that have status effects on it. The way that the shotgun works is particularly good, something that a lot of games don't really grasp. The idea is a shotgun actually is not that good at point-blank range. People say, oh, what a great weapon at point-blank range. It's not a blunderbuss, yeah? That's what a blunderbuss is. A shotgun fires a tightly controlled spread of pellets shot that then expands as it goes forward, yeah? So shooting at point-blank range is very difficult. There's a character with a shotgun in the game that is exactly like that. I kind of liked that guy, actually. He was a lot of fun. It was a pretty interesting game. I think it's something that they need to refine a lot more before even thinking about releasing it now. We then went and checked out a new Dota-style game called Smashmuck Champions, which actually is... There's the logo. Looks something like that. There's a beta code right there. That's going to be a closed beta on Steam quite soon. Also on their website, which I think is smashmuckchampions.com, if I remember correctly. There, you can Google it one way or the other. But they've got an open beta running on that. They've been developing this sort of casual Dota-style game for quite some time. It's an action-orientated one, so it's more similar to stuff like Awesome Naughts and to a lesser extent Bloodline Champions. It's got some really nice hero design, pretty innovative, and it's got a lot of different game modes. Their main game mode is kind of a capture the flag, which is pretty good. I stomped at that game. I was pretty happy about that. That was pretty awesome. Everything's aimed, so that's nice as well. It also brings jumping in to an isometric game, which is fairly unusual, especially with Dota. Awesome Naughts obviously has platforming and jumping as a main part of the mechanics. Here, you can actually jump on other players, not only enemies, but friendlies as well. If you jump on friendlies, you can actually gain access and jump over areas that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to. So there's some interesting escape paths going on with that. It's a pretty interesting game. A lot of the characters in that game have 2 or more passives and actual slottable passives that can be put in depending on your level. So that's something that's definitely worth having a look at. Now, after that, we went to check out Vlambeer's booth. By booth, I mean it was basically a shed, which is exactly what we would have expected Vlambeer to have. There was only one guy there, unbelievably, and we got to play their forthcoming game by the name of Lufttrousers, which sounds like Love Trousers, and I'm going to just stick with that. That's a really weird game, and Vlambeer are the guys that made Super Crate Box as well as Ridiculous Fishing. They're a little bit out of their minds, and I kind of like that about them. They made this game which is very Time Pilot, very Jet Fighter, Xevious kind of, but also not. It actually looks like a Game Boy game deliberately. The aesthetic is a lot of browns and pixels and things like that, which is very unusual, but it allows you to customize different aircraft and actually make them out of parts. There's also a randomized mode, which can result in some pretty wacky combinations. I was flying something around that had something called a Gungeon, which was propelled by firing a gun from the back of the actual vehicle itself. It's got some nice flight mechanics, actually. It's a top-down flight game, but the flight feels pretty good. Like, when you apply thrust, the handling completely changes to when you stop thrusting, so It's nice. I liked it a lot. It's a nice little game. I don't know how much replayability it's got. More of a score attack game than anything else, and obviously it looks hideous. But it's a very deliberate graphic style, and I think it was a pretty fun game. After that, we went to go and see Clay, because we wanted to check out the new Mark of the Ninja DLC, as well as the updates to Don't Starve. So we did play some Mark of the Ninja Director's Cut, which has the brand new levels in it, as well as a new mechanic, which the whole level is based around, which is the non-lethal takedown. So that's a nice little, I suppose, a nice little thing between the idea of pure stealth and just killing everybody, because you couldn't really do a lot of non-lethal stuff in Mark of the Ninja, so it's nice that that's there. The level seems pretty long, the content looks really good, it's hard as hell as well, so it's always good to see more Mark of the Ninja. We don't know when that DLC is coming out yet, though. Don't Starve we didn't quite get to do because we had some recording issues, so we'll be returning there tomorrow, as well as to Dungeon Defenders 2, which we have an appointment for tomorrow, by Trendy, which is looking like a more Dota-style version of Dungeon Defenders, which is a game that did very, very well, so we'll see where that goes. Now, the highlight of the day, I think, was seeing Transistor, which is the new game from Supergiant. Those are the guys that brought you Bastion. So that in itself is a huge deal. It only got announced maybe last week, if that. They had it playable there. We were able to film the full playable demo, which is about 20-25 minutes. I commentated with Greg Kasavin, who is their creative director. That game is, oh wow, I mean, it looks incredible. It's got the same kind of art style as Bastion, but it's an entirely different game. It's got some really interesting mechanics. It's not just Bastion of the future. It's something completely different. So I'm looking forward to bringing you the Transistor content. I think you're going to really dig that. It is so good looking, and it's got some really cool ideas and mechanics behind it. And the voice actor makes his return as a talking sword. So, you know, how could you possibly complain? I can't complain. That was pretty damn wonderful. Now, what else did we play? It just kind of bits and pieces here and there. We had to cancel a few things because we had recording problems and we had to come back to it from time to time. Did play a game called Raise the Dead, which was a pun, pretty bad one at that, which was kind of like a mixture of, I suppose, sort of Burn Zombie Burn, Stubbs the Zombie, and Pikmin. That was pretty cool. It was alright. It was kind of buggy. I also did play Rise of the Triad, which got me super excited now. I played multiplayer in that. Deathmatch, ridiculously fast. Like, I'm talking Quake, Unreal Tournament level of quick. All the original weapons reprise. There's a lot of really cool stuff in that game. I'm looking forward to the single player now, having played that. That was definitely a highlight for me. It was a really fast-paced, old-school deathmatch game with a lot of different kinds of rocket launchers and explosives and a lot of gibs flying all over the place, special powers. Difficult to navigate levels with a lot of jumping tricks available, rocket jumps of course making a full return. It's cool, you know, it's a deathmatch shooter. There's no gimmicks. It's not like, say, Nexus, which is very much kind of the Mario Party of deathmatch shooters. It is just a straight up good deathmatch shooter, so I had a blast with that one. And I think that pretty much covers everything we got to do on day one. Everything that I just mentioned there was something we got to film. We don't tend to go to places where there is no filming, because it's a waste of time for you guys, and it's like, what's the point? I could sit for an hour waiting for Elder Scrolls Online and then not be able to film it, or I can just wait until I get beta access and then give it to you then. It makes more sense for me to check out interesting games. That's what we come to PAX for. PAX is really good for that. E3 is terrible for it. Just, we want to see interesting games. And PAX is just chock full of really good indie stuff that is exactly that. So we'll be bringing you plenty more content from PAX. The actual videos themselves will probably start going up next week. But I'd like to give you a quick reminder, of course, that the TGS Podcast Live is happening at 5 p.m. on Saturday in the Wyvern Theatre, one of the smaller theatres. It'll be myself, Jesse Cox, Dodger, and a special guest, whose name we shall not reveal at this time, but that should be pretty cool. Alright, folks, I'm going to go try and get over my PAX pox. Thank you very much for watching this content PAX. I'll bring you another one tomorrow, and I will see you next time.